The hardest part about letting someone go isn't the physical distance. It's the emotional gravity they still hold over you. It's the way your mind keeps replaying moments, rewriting conversations, trying to solve a puzzle that was never yours to solve. That's why detachment isn't just about ignoring a phone call or resisting the urge to text. It's about reclaiming the power you unknowingly handed over the moment you started basing your peace on someone else's behavior. Most people misunderstand detachment. They think it's cold, heartless, or cruel. But detachment isn't about pretending you never cared. It's about realizing that caring doesn't mean chasing, and love doesn't mean losing yourself in someone else's indifference. It's about saying, I can still feel deeply, but I refuse to let those feelings control my decisions. And that's where real strength begins. Not when you stop loving, but when you stop abandoning yourself in the name of love. Think about it. Every time you reach out to someone who's already shown they don't value your presence, you reinforce a story that says their approval is worth more than your self-respect. You hand them the script and let them dictate the narrative. But the moment you decide to detach, that script changes. You shift from being the one waiting for validation to being the one writing your own story. And in that shift, something powerful happens. You remember that your worth was never up for debate in the first place. Detachment is not weakness. It is a discipline. It's the conscious act of saying, I refuse to fight for space in someone's life when I can create space for myself. It's choosing not to respond, not because you don't have words, but because you've realized that your silence protects your dignity better than any argument ever could. And yes, it's uncomfortable. Yes, it will ache. Because your mind is wired to seek connection, to close loops, to fix what's broken. But not every broken thing is yours to fix. Some things are meant to remain undone because their absence is what creates room for something better. What most people don't see is that detachment is the birthplace of clarity. When you step back, when you stop feeding the dynamic, the fog begins to lift. You start to see the situation not through the lens of your longing, but through the lens of reality. You notice the patterns you ignored, the disrespect you rationalized, the bare minimum you accepted because you were afraid to lose them. And with every moment of silence, with every choice not to engage, you reclaim a little more of yourself. Here's the truth: you cannot heal in the same environment that wounded you, and you cannot rediscover your strength while you're still handing it over. Detachment is not running away. It's returning home to yourself. It's building a life so full, so grounded, that their absence no longer feels like a hole, but like space. Space you can now fill with purpose, peace, and people who truly see you. So when I say never contact them again, I'm not telling you to punish them. I'm telling you to free yourself. Because every time you choose not to reach out, you reinforce a deeper message, that your value is not dependent on someone else's recognition of it. And that's the real transformation. That's when you stop reacting to how they treated you and start creating a standard for how you deserve to be treated. Silence is one of the most underestimated forces in human relationships. We live in a world that glorifies action. Send the text, make the call, chase the closure. We're taught that if we don't speak, we'll lose our chance to be heard. But the truth is, silence often speaks louder than anything you could ever say. It has weight, it has presence. It has the power to make people stop, reflect, and confront realities they've been running from. And when someone has walked away from you, dismissed you, or treated you like an option, silence becomes your most eloquent response. Think about this. As long as you're reaching out, you're sending a message. And not just to them, but to yourself. Every text that goes unanswered, every call that's ignored, reinforces the idea that your worth is tied to their attention. And here's the harsh truth. People rarely value what's always available. But silence creates space. It removes the noise and forces them to feel the absence they once took for granted. It's in that quiet that the mind starts asking questions. Why aren't they reaching out? Have they moved on? Did I underestimate their strength? That internal dialogue is far more powerful than anything you could write in a long message. But silence isn't about manipulation. It's not a game. It's a boundary. One that says, I will not chase someone who has chosen to walk away. It's about shifting the energy from pursuit to presence, from seeking validation to standing in your own self-worth. Because silence isn't passive, it's deeply intentional. It's you saying, I will not argue for my value. I will not beg to be seen. I will not explain my worth to someone who decided to forget it. And that message hits far harder than any words ever could. It's also important to understand the psychological depth of silence. Human beings are wired to respond to absence. When something that once existed suddenly disappears, the brain struggles to reconcile the change. This is called the Zeigarnik effect. Our minds fixate on unfinished business. Your silence creates that sense of incompletion. It lingers, it disrupts the comfort they felt in assuming you'd always be there. And whether they act on it or not, they notice it. They feel it, it shifts the dynamic completely. Because now, instead of you being the one waiting, they are the ones wondering. And here's where the power really lies. Silence isn't just a mirror for them, it's a mirror for you. In that quiet, you see yourself more clearly. You begin to realize how much energy you were spending trying to convince someone to stay. You recognize the peace that exists when you're no longer explaining yourself to someone unwilling to understand. Silence gives you perspective. It lets you feel the weight of your own presence without their validation attached to it. When you break no contact too soon, you rob yourself of that clarity. You press pause on your healing and hand the emotional control right back to them. But when you commit to silence, you start shifting the story. You stop reacting to their absence and start responding to your own needs. You create a life that doesn't hinge on whether or not they notice you're gone. And ironically, that's often the exact moment they do. The most powerful statements in life are often unspoken. Your silence says, I am not here to convince you. I am here to choose me. It says, I don't need closure from you because I can give it to myself. It says, I am no longer available for anyone who cannot see my worth without me shouting it. That's not weakness. That's strength on a level most people never reach. One of the most painful truths you'll ever have to accept is this: healing will never happen if you keep revisiting the place where you got hurt. Every time you break no contact, every time you reach out just to check in, you're not moving forward. You're reopening the wound. You're not looking for answers. You're looking for a way to avoid the discomfort of letting go. And yet, that discomfort is exactly where healing begins. Human beings are creatures of habit, and emotional pain is no exception. We get trapped in loops, cycles of hope and disappointment, longing and rejection, connection and withdrawal. Even when we know someone isn't good for us, a part of us still clings to the fantasy that this time will be different. That if we just say the right thing or wait a little longer or give them one more chance, they'll finally change. But here's the brutal truth: that hope is the very thing that keeps you stuck. It's the chain that binds you to the past and robs you of the future you deserve. Breaking the cycle is not just about blocking a number or deleting a thread. It's about confronting the deeper reason you keep going back. Because if we're honest, it's rarely about them. It's about us. It's about the parts of ourselves that feel unworthy, the parts that crave validation, the parts that confuse familiarity with love. And until you address those parts, you'll keep repeating the pattern with the same person or someone new wearing a different face. True healing happens when you choose to sit with the discomfort instead of running back to what caused it. It happens when you say, I want peace more than I want closure. I want freedom more than I want their approval. The paradox of healing is that it requires you to let go without resolution. You may never get the apology you deserve. You may never understand why they did what they did. And that's okay. Closure doesn't come from their explanation. It comes from your decision to stop waiting for it. It's the moment you stop negotiating with the past and start building a future that doesn't depend on their participation. That is what never contact them again is truly about. It's not about anger or punishment. It's about liberation. And yes, it will hurt. Healing isn't a straight line. There will be days when the silence feels heavier than any conversation. Days when your heart wants to reach out even though your mind knows better. But every time you resist, every time you choose yourself over the impulse to break no contact, you are teaching your nervous system a new story. One where safety and love come from within, not from someone else's inconsistent presence. This is also where your growth begins. Because the space that opens up when you stop chasing them isn't just empty. It's fertile ground. It's where you rediscover parts of yourself you neglected while trying to hold on to them. It's where you find new passions, build deeper self-respect, and attract relationships that meet you where you are rather than drain you into who they want you to be. The cycle ends the moment you stop feeding it. And when it ends, you stop repeating lessons and start living wisdom. So understand this: breaking the cycle isn't just about losing them. It's about finding you. It's about reclaiming the energy you once poured into convincing someone to stay and using it to build a life that makes their absence irrelevant. Because healing isn't about fixing what broke. It's about becoming someone who no longer breaks in the same way. At the core of all of this, beyond the pain, beyond the silence, beyond the discipline of letting go, is one simple but life-altering truth. Choosing no contact is not about them. It's about you. It's about who you decide to become on the other side of disappointment. It's about reclaiming the parts of yourself you handed over piece by piece, while trying to make someone else see your worth. And it's about drawing a line in the sand and saying, I matter more than the version of me that kept begging for less than I deserve. You see, most people approach no contact like a tactic to get the other person back, or to make them regret what they did. But that's the wrong lens entirely. This is not a strategy for revenge, it's a declaration of self-respect. When you refuse to reach out, when you stop checking their social media, when you stop replaying what if scenarios in your head, you are not doing it to change their behavior. You are doing it to change your own. Because the truth is, you cannot build a powerful life if you are constantly handing the keys to your peace over to someone else. This is where identity comes into play. Every action you take reinforces the story you tell yourself about who you are. When you keep chasing someone who's shown you they're not invested, you reinforce the identity of someone who accepts crumbs. But when you stop, when you hold your ground, when you choose your peace over their presence, you rewrite that story. You become someone who sets standards, who protects their energy, who refuses to negotiate their worth. And that shift is everything, because the quality of your life is determined by the standards you're willing to uphold. Here's the deeper truth: the version of you who tolerated their behavior cannot be the same version who builds the life you're meant to live. To evolve, you have to let that version die. And that means letting go of the attachments, the fantasies, the maybe some days that kept you stuck. Choosing no contact is an act of faith. Faith that something better exists beyond what you're leaving behind. Faith that you are strong enough to walk away even when it hurts. Faith that you can build something extraordinary without needing them to complete you. And let's be honest, this is not easy work. It's not glamorous. It doesn't feel powerful in the beginning. It feels lonely. It feels like doubt. It feels like standing in the middle of your own life with nothing to hold on to. But that's the point, because in that space, you finally have both hands free to build. That's where you rediscover your strength. That's where you find clarity about who you are and what you want. That's where you stop living life in reaction to someone else and start creating a life that reflects your true worth. The beauty of this journey is that once you fully choose yourself, you stop needing closure, validation, or revenge. Their opinion loses its power. Their presence stops defining your happiness. And ironically, that's often when they notice, not because you were trying to make them, but because you've shifted into a version of yourself that no longer needs their attention. And that version, that's the one who attracts better, demands more, and never settles again. So if you're standing at that crossroads right now, wondering whether to reach out or to let go, understand this: choosing no contact isn't about punishing them. It's about protecting you. It's about building a future where your peace isn't dependent on someone else's choices. It's about proving once and for all that you are enough on your own.